You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans. We just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media headline nonsense that they get into. We are sticking to the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season, and now sorting through all the drama, the rumors, the nonsense, the non-nonsense, all the stuff of the offseason. If y'all want to support the podcast, please go ahead and spike that like button right now. Give us a follow on all those socials, and most importantly, jump on over to that Packers Talk Network YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, hit the little bell next to it for the bonus points. We greatly appreciate, love you subscribers hanging out with us every week at Monday night. Sometimes 9:35, we're a little 5-minute buffer there, but we're here. We're having fun. Tonight, we got a few things to get into here. The coordinators speak. They have put a few things out there for us to ponder on. It's got some player stuff bubbling around a little bit. Maybe it's not all things good in paradise on the offensive side of the ball. Seems like maybe there's some issues there. We're going to have to parse a few of those things out. Definitely thought Hafley's press conference was interesting. There's a couple things he said that got my attention. But first, our show is sponsored once again by Wisconsin's own Ticket King. Please, for over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans, as well as Bucks, Brewers, Summerfest tickets, all those things. Get after it. They got them for you right now. It's coming up. Get them. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. Remember, support those local Wisconsin businesses or whatever your local area may be. Tim, good evening, sir. How we doing?
Good evening, Miles. Doing good. It is scheduled release time, so we're getting some news there. It's coordinator time. They got to speak, and we've been talking. You and I have been going back and forth about Jair for what seems like years now, but it's only been a couple months, I guess. I think that's yesterday's news. Like that's the old what do they call it? Tired. We're now wired or whatever tired and wired. Wired is Elton Jenkins. Like we need Elton Jenkins watch now. Jair
What's
watch.
going on?
Who cares? We'll figure out Jair. They'll eventually figure that out. Sometime between now and the start of the season, maybe.
They will.
Elton Jenkins.
It'll happen.
There's something there. It seemed like there was something underneath the surface. I know a couple weeks ago when they got the players back in town, Packers posted stuff on social media or on their website, all these pictures and videos. And Matt Schneidman covers the team for The Athletic. He went through like all these pictures and was listing all the players that he didn't see in any of them. Mm-hmm. Elton Jenkins was one of them. And so, it was questioned, is Elton Jenkins taking part in an off-season program? And Adam Stenavich basically said today he's not. I think the question to him was, how does he feel about playing center? And Stanovich's reaction or his answer was he's open to it. I think he's open to it. That's different than what Goody said. First time Goody talked after they signed Aaron Banks, he came right out and said Elton Jenkins is playing center. Now he's open to it. There's something's going on there if Elton Jenkins isn't in town, because I believe he's got money due in his contract for being there in the offseason like most of the Packers players do, so he's missing out. And it's interesting that he's choosing not to participate. We don't really know why. He hasn't come out and said anything. His agent hasn't said anything. There hasn't been any Adam Schefter reports coming from the agent about what's going on. So all we can do is speculate, but obviously they're asking him to change positions. Don't know how he feels about that. I mean, I would hope they had discussed it with him ahead of time, and they just paid Banks a lot of money, more money than what Elton Jenkins is getting. So he maybe wants an adjustment to his contract, but certainly something to keep an eye on now, because that's a big piece of your offensive line that's potentially unhappy with the situation.
Yeah, and we didn't even get the smoke. We're just like seeing some, like flashes of fire going, wait a second.
Yeah.
What happened here? Why is there a fire? But yeah, this is strange behavior. A guy like Jenkins, you probably prefer him to be there in the offseason. He's in a bit of a leadership position at this point. Yeah, just you wonder what's going on. I believe Stenovich did say that that he doesn't seem to have an issue with moving to center. Now, if he knew that there was an issue with it, would he admit that? I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit more of a like roundabout way of being like, yeah, like we're going to see how it goes. Like, I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely concerning because that is one of your best offensive linemen right there.
Yeah, it's something. And again, what was the conversation like with him? Like, did they have this conversation at the end of last season? Said, hey, there's a possibility you may be moving the center. Are you cool with that? Or was this sprung on him like, hey, we just signed Banks and you're moving the center? And, how does he feel about that? And obviously he can look and see the contract that Banks got and realize, geez, I'm a better player, number one. I've been here longer, and now I'm taking one for the team. Like, you need to adjust my contract. You need to give me something. And center's a position that historically, with some exceptions, but historically they don't get paid as much as guards do. So right. He's moving to a position that's lesser compensation for him. Going into, he's after this season, they can get out of his contract pretty easily. And he might be looking at it and realizing, like, all right, like, give me some kind of an extension, give me more money. You're just paying this guy from outside to take my position, and I'm moving for you. Show me some love. And
yeah,
I get it from Elton Jenkins' perspective if he's upset about that. I hope he's fine with moving the center, but if it's a money in a contract thing, I can see his point on that. We don't know if that's what it is truly. We can only be left to speculate. And I guess it's a better thing that it's kind of been, quiet. It's been a quiet kind of not showing up thing. It's not this, big situation yet. And hopefully he never becomes that. But there's definitely something there if he's not at off-season workouts.
So the quote from our guy, Bob Domovsky, who was there, the quote from the Stenovich press conference, Stenovich said, based on conversations he had with Elgin Jenkins about moving to center, quote, I think he's open to it. Okay, so that doesn't sound great. That's not total conviction for sure. So that's not the reason Jenkins isn't here for the offseason workouts. Clarification question, Steno says, quote, he's not here for reasons other than that.
So then
that's pretty clear.
Contract.
I mean, it's clear that it's not that's not the reason. He didn't parse words. He's not here for reasons other than that. Yeah, so I gotta believe it's contract related, which would make sense. Hey, we want you to play a different position. Great. I don't have a lot of security right now, and that position gets paid less. What's in it for me? I think that's the conversation that has to happen here. Hopefully Goody and team aren't really surprised by that. I mean, these guys have been in the game for a long time. You can't be surprised by that. So hopefully this is something that they've calculated into the equation, and maybe they're working on an extension and he doesn't want to get hurt until then,
it could be. I mean, that's possible. But hopefully it's nothing. Hopefully nothing, major comes from it. And if it is contract related, they can get it figured out. But it certainly seems like something's there, something's going on, and not all is right between Jenkins and the Packers right now.
And he was involved in we'll call it an issue, I guess, in Atlanta. Sound like kind of a nothing burger at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, goes to a club, wants his money back. I think he got his money back, and that was like the end of it, something like that. So I don't know that needs to like enter the picture as a part of this equation. Maybe that's reporters trying to do some dirty work, against a guy who's in a contract situation. I wouldn't put it past anybody, man. It sounds like agents play dirty games. So, there's stuff that could fly around. But ultimately, what we do know, and I made a tweet about this last week, the Packers don't let stuff out. They just don't. When you hear rumors, especially coming through guys, like it's almost certainly from an agent, not from the Packers. Sometimes they'll get permission to say stuff, and a lot of times that means the stuff that they're saying is inconsequential and probably irrelevant. In this situation, the fact that you haven't heard anything actually probably shouldn't be surprising, but certainly doesn't mean there's nothing going on. You know, I would be inclined to think that there's some contract negotiations going on, and coaches don't want to have any comments about stuff like that. They never do. So that makes a lot of sense why Steno would step away from that one the way he did. Man, if it's not that, that's far more concerning. I hope it's contract issues. If it's not contract issues, that's concerning. That's not good because he's definitely a centerpiece of the O-line. Not, no pun intended there.
Right. And he's a highly important part of that offensive line and that offense just overall. Who knows? We're speculating. We don't know what's going on exactly, but it just seems like something's going on. But I mean, next week, maybe he shows up and he's smiling and all is okay and right with the team and with Jenkins. But it's definitely something that is now worth monitoring. And add that to Jair. And it seems like we get one of these every year with the Packers. Like, where's the drama? Somebody's got some drama, and with their contracts or with whether they want to be in Green Bay or not. And yeah, it would just be nice to have one off season where there's no issues like this, but not this off season for sure.
Not this one, but hopefully these are small issues. Hopefully we get like a surprise announcement that Jenkins came to a contract extension agreement. Jair reports healthy at training camp, just like everybody's back and happy. Now everything's good. That's what we want.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. So that's going on. Let's see here. The Hafley press conference. Did you get to listen to that one?
I did. Yeah. He's always a good listen. Always.
He really is.
Yeah. He's great. He's great. He'll be a head coach again someday. Hopefully not for a few more years, but he's great up there.
As I was listening to him, I remember thinking to myself, like, it's really sad that this isn't going to last. Yeah, guys, excellent. I enjoyed the press conference in general. I appreciated his sentiment about him needing to be better, not because I have a specific criticism of him, but I like that that's his mentality before anybody presses him about it. I would say that he had room after the way they played last season to not really need to make the focus about him being better specifically. But I liked the tone of it. I liked it sounds like they're really being introspective on how things went last year. He explained some of the differences in this offseason versus last offseason, where they're able to do more self-scouting within the system rather than having to kind of talk about things like, well, here's how this would fit in that system and here's how you would do that. You can actually look at a guy in the system and go, here's what you need to do better and here's why. That makes a lot of sense to me, that would make improvements a little bit easier maybe, or at least to identify. But yeah, overall, I really liked it. What was your favorite takeaway, biggest takeaway? Did you get any real information out of it?
Not a ton, but I think he confirmed how much they like versatility. And talking about Nate Hobbs, he's going to play in a slot. He's going to play outside. And that's kind of what we were figuring. But that, he Hafley confirmed it, and that they like him outside just as much as they like him in the slot. So expect to see, Hobbs moved around. Several players are going to be moved around. I mean, and even talking about Colin Oliver, one of the first questions was about the pass rushers they draft, and then a follow-up about Oliver. And he said he doesn't view him as just a designated pass rusher. He views him as more probably an off-ball linebacker that can also line up on the edge and rush. So we're going to see some versatility with Oliver and how they try to develop him. And I think just the sense I get, previous things that LaFleur said and now listening to Hafley, I feel like they maybe had this idea of what their defense wanted to be last year. And then because of injuries at cornerback, because of the inconsistent pass rush, they had to go a different route. They had to do some different things. And a lot of that was like bringing your linebackers up in the A gaps, mugging them, sometimes blitzing them. I mean, we saw Cooper blitz, we saw Quay blitz a lot. I think they did more of that stuff than they were ever anticipating. But I also think now they see that they did it and they had some success with some things. And I think they're going to be more of a diverse defense than what probably the original plan was for last season. There's definitely things that I think will stick that they tried last year that they weren't necessarily planning on trying, but they had to out of necessity. And now they're going to stick going forward along with all those other concepts that they, already had in the playbook. So it'll be interesting how the defense evolves, but yeah, those were kind of my takeaways from what Hafley said. And then and I'm sure we're going to touch on this too, just his comments about the new defensive line coach, DeMarcus Covington.
Yeah, I really appreciated how that question was asked and how he responded. The first half of the question was, like, what led to you guys parting ways with the previous D-line coach? And, second question, what attracted you to DeMarcus Covington? And Hafley was basically like, well, I'm going to ignore that first part, but that second part, great question. And you got to respect the honesty there. Yeah. I think that speaks volumes, though, about what the situation was. And I've been talking about this a lot, but we've definitely had some conversations about coaching, the impact coaching can have, and certainly this offseason, I think that conversation has kind of gained new life because of the pass rush and people wanting more of a solution maybe to the pass rush situation and not really getting the splash player or, whatever it may be. Whereas the Packers see this as like, guys, you don't understand. Like, we have fixed a problem. And that's kind of how I read what he was saying there is when that there's just an issue with somebody, you're going to part ways with them. It just is what it is. Like, look, it didn't work out. We don't need to talk about why. When you have a situation like that, though, it makes it very difficult to perform to the best of your abilities. Everybody's had a bad boss or a rotten coworker, somebody you just don't jive with for whatever reason. And it's very difficult under those circumstances to perform to the best of your abilities. So that's where I would say I'm with the coaches on this one. Hafley seems to be doubling down on the guys that are in the room are good. And he wasn't even talking about necessarily the pass rush. He called out the interior D-line first. And just saying, like, I think we got the guys in the room, really definitely echoing the sentiment that Goody's been saying. And it didn't sound forced, like if he disagreed with that sentiment at all, he definitely could have said different things than what he did. And Hafley seems like a pretty genuine and authentic dude. He doesn't seem like a guy who's just going to say stuff to get you to shut up. So yeah, I take that response pretty loudly, right? Like the whole, let's just not talk about that guy, but this new guy. And when he dives into what he likes about Covington, man, I'm eating it up. He's talking about he's a good teacher. He's a good communicator. He gets the game. He's kind of a football nerd, really just loves the game. It's a very common theme of the type of person that these guys seem to look for. They want the guys who love the game. They want the guys who seem to be good communicators. So, if you think, like, let's just say, for example, because we don't have good ways to do this, but, let's say that they believe they're going from a C- coach to an A+ coach at the D-line position. How much do you believe that improves the players in the room?
Well, I hope it improves them a lot, and it definitely should improve them at least some. And I think they're putting a lot into that hire to change things. I'm kind of more in that camp. Like, they should have done more for the pass rush. I don't think you can just rely almost solely on hiring a defensive line coach to fix everything. I think he can make a big difference. Certainly if, what was going on last season just was so poor, and that's the results they got. But Kenny Clark or Sean Gary needed to be better. I don't care who's coaching them; those guys are veteran enough players. They needed to produce, and they didn't. So is Covington going to come in here and all of a sudden those guys are going to flip the switch and go back to what they were before him? I don't know. I sure hope so, but I don't think it's just the previous D-line coach that was the only issue. Was he the biggest? Maybe. We'll find out, but this was my fear when they made this change. It was like, okay, we hired a new position coach. That's going to fix everything because we really like the guys we have in the room, and that's fine. I get liking your guys. You're the ones that draft them and brought them in, but you also you can't fall in love with them. Like you got to realize they didn't produce enough. They weren't consistent, and you needed to get reinforcements. And they drafted 2 guys, a 4th and a 5th rounder. That's great, and I hope Sorrell and Oliver are all-time greats, right? Like we want the best for those guys, but to expect them to come in and immediately help this defense, I think that's asking way too much. And they're going to take time to develop, as they should, as 4th and 5th round picks. So I don't see where your pass rush gets better other than just the internal guys and the new coach, which, hey, it might help them, it might improve them, they might take enough of a jump, but I would have felt a whole lot more comfortable if there was a veteran that they could have brought in either at defensive tackle or at edge rusher. Would have made me feel a lot more comfortable along with that defensive line coach. So to go back to your question, I think Covington can help potentially a lot. But it's still going to come down to these players and the growth that they can make in the second year in this system.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I do lean optimistic in a lot of things, right? Like I kind of feel like that's the purpose of being a fan. It's just hope for the best. But, realistically looking at what the situation is, it's one of those to me that sometimes you need the glue to make the pieces come together, or like in a good recipe, right? Like you may have the staples, but man, if you don't have enough salt, you don't have enough garlic, like just enough of this or enough of that, it feels empty. It doesn't quite deliver. And then you have those few ingredients that tie things together, and all of a sudden, bang, like that recipe, it slaps. Like now I'm in. And that's kind of how I view these guys. First of all, Sorrell, I mean, we've talked about him, and what an impressive moment being drafted in the way he was. But he seems like an A+ human, right? Like everybody loves him. That kind of guy. That kind of guy can really uplift a locker room, or a film room, or that just a whole group in general. So I don't know. I don't want to diminish the impact that those guys can have. And Chase Oliver, right? If he doesn't get hurt, are we looking at him differently? Because he had a pretty dang good start to last season. It was only 2 games, so you can't put a ton into that. You got to look at the player on the film. The Packers seem to like him, and as you mentioned, Hafley doesn't see him as a special teams player / designated pass rusher. All right, he sees him as a guy who can get on the field and do something. So I don't know. I'm very optimistic that the combination of a few less than sexy moves, we'll call them, can equal more than the sum of the parts. You know what I mean? You can plug those things in and get a lot more than what they look like they can be right now. So that's where I would look at, I guess, the perspective that I have on this group and those moves. I'm optimistic about each move. I like each move. Covington seems like a great dude, and great teacher is what I heard Hafley say, and I think that can't be understated. Great teachers, man. If you've had a great teacher in school, like that person made an impact on you, and if you had a rotten teacher in school, you probably didn't learn anything in that subject that you had a rotten teacher with. If he's truly a great teacher, man, that is great news for this defensive front. So those are the things I get pretty excited about, those things being able to add up to something. And the other thing is the rest of this defense looks strong, right? Like you're not looking at this defense like, well, pass rush, but then this, but then that, but then this. Like, pretty excited about the linebacker unit, pretty excited about the safety unit, pretty excited about the corner unit, and there's some question marks there that we've, exhausted. We don't need to get into all of that. We'll see what happens. if you can uplift that front seven, man, I think look out. It gets pretty exciting pretty quick. And Hafley, he was saying last year at the end of the year, thing that he most was he most proud of or appreciated the most about the way the guys played was they were playing hard. He felt like they were playing very physical, fast. That if they can continue that, man, yeah, sky's the limit for this team. That's why last week, I got a little excited. It was like best defense in the league, maybe. And you need a star pass rusher, I think, to achieve that best defense in the league title. We'll see if a star emerges. But man, I get real optimistic real quick if these things go well. If they don't, I don't know. Maybe you take a step backwards.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, to me, that's the biggest issue on the defense for sure. Maybe on the entire team is the pass rush, the lack of pass rush that we saw last season. I'm with you. I feel pretty good about the other spots, even cornerback. Like they definitely need depth there. But you could say that probably about almost every team in the league. But they could use some depth. But the guys that are probably going to play a lot of snaps for them, I feel pretty good. I feel better than I certainly did this time last year. And I think they held up when you consider Jair only played 7 games last year. And, they were running through Stokes and Valentine and putting Valentine, putting Nixon outside. Like, man, if you just told me that before the season, I would have thought that's going to be a disaster. And it really wasn't. They held up, pretty well considering. And I feel better about the corner room now than I would expect to. And it just needs depth. It just comes down to the pass rush. It comes down to the front four, getting to the quarterback. And I'm still concerned with that. Like they haven't done enough to make me feel better about it. I liked it that they changed defensive line coaches. That had to be done after last season. And everything I've heard and read about Covington sounds great. And I get that Van Ness can be better and Wyatt can be better. We have to see them do it, right? No matter who the defensive line coach is, those guys have to do it. I feel better that Kenny Clark's going to have a better year, that Rashawn Gary's going to have a better year, but I don't know what we're going to get from Van Ness or Wyatt. And I'm really super. I mean, I probably one of the guys that I'm the most excited to see this year is Edgerrin Cooper, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like what he can be for that team, because he's a game changer and he may cover up some other areas that aren't so good on the defense, like maybe we're a little weaker at because of the different things that he can do on the field, whether that's rushing the pass or coverage or just being, the crazy linebacker that can run sideline to sideline with the freak athletic ability. So yeah, I feel good about the defense, but that's the one spot where I'm still hesitant to get too optimistic is I don't think they've done enough this offseason to address the pass rush.
So, well, let me ask it this way. Do you think the pass rush is will be better at the beginning of the 2025 season than they were at the end of the 2024 season? Not how much, just are they an ounce better? Are they an ounce better?
I'll say yes, and I think that's because of the change in the defensive line coach. I don't think Kenny Clark can play worse as a pass rusher than he did last year, or produce worse, right? And I think Gary will be better. And I think if Wyatt's a guy that's, I think, under the radar kind of key. Like we all talk about Van Ness's development, and that's going to be huge. Wyatt's important. And I thought he was playing really nice football at the beginning of last season. And then he got the high ankle sprain, missed a lot of time. And he came back and he never was consistent after that. I think he had a game or two. And one of them might have been the Seattle game. And Seattle's offensive line was terrible. And they, that was one of their big pass rushing games.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, he was good, he had the injury, came back, and he was inconsistent after that. Like, if he can get and stay healthy and be that player we saw like the first 3 or 4 games of the season last year, he could be what they thought he was going to be when they picked him in the first round. And that would be huge to have a pass rusher like that coming up the middle. So, yeah, I think their pass rush will be better beginning of 2025 season than where it finished at the end of 2024.
Okay. That's a good step in the right direction. Is it enough? That's the question. You don't feel like it's enough, but there is room to believe, the guys could perform and it could be enough.
Could be. And, and there's, we don't have to get in this too much, but there's a player that just became available who could help their pass rush.
Yes, very interesting. You bring that one up. What are
Yeah.
we thinking about this player?
Yeah, Jadeveon Clowney, he's a little older. I think he's 32 now, and we know he's had some injuries in the past. But I think he's still got something left in the tank. You know, he produced a little bit in Carolina, but they were an awful defense. They got run over at like a historic rate last year. So I don't know how much he truly got to rush the passer, you know, in true pass rushing, you know, your team's close in a game or has a lead and you can really go get the quarterback. And he's never been a big sack guy as it is. But the previous season when he was in Baltimore, he was like a role player and he played that role really well in Baltimore, fit great there. And I think that's what he is in this part of his career. Like, if you bring him in, he's not going to – I don't think it's going to hurt Lucas Van Ness's development because he's going to take all the snaps. He's not. He's going to be like – whether he's a starter or not doesn't really matter. He's going to play a certain amount of snaps, play that role, and I think play it really well for you. And you can still develop Van Ness and Brenton Cox and Enigbare, you know, the two rookies as well. Like, I don't think he's going to stun anybody's development because he's not an every down player, but he's a player that can still make an impact. I don't think he's going to cost a whole lot, but he might cost more than what the Packers are willing to do, which I think might be the holdup. But yeah, to me, I would definitely be interested, and I think they should be. I think it would make a lot of sense to add him to the team. Again, he wouldn't be like a savior. He wouldn't be like, all right, this is going to be the guy that's just going to unlock their pass rush and here we go. Like, you know, he's their big superstar pass rusher. No, he's far from that. But I think he can play, you know, a certain amount, whether it's 25 snaps a game, whatever, and play it really well and effective for you.
Well, yeah, and I think it'll actually come down to, you know, who is the guy? I don't know much about Jadeveon Clowney, the dude. You know, do they believe that he can come in and fit in with the group? Or is he a jerk? You know, I don't know. He's been with a lot of teams, right?
Yeah.
And hasn't stuck with any of them. They keep moving on from him. So that's where I'm wondering, like, who is this dude? Is that just who he is, right? He just likes being a journeyman, doesn't really care to stick with a team. That's cool, man. If that's your style, whatever, you know, power to you. From a production perspective, yeah, man, I agree with you. Like that's one of those where in a situation like a 3rd and, you know, 10, 3rd and 5 or plus, whatever, when you could put him out there, that like he's somebody that has to be accounted for, you know, and not to say that he's a decoy, but you might have some things going on the defense. And then all of a sudden you're just going to put that guy out there. The quarterback knows that he's coming at him. He knows, not a dang thing you can do about it. So you can have that, and then, you know, it's a psychological chess piece, you know. So I like that idea as well. I think he's a good weapon. I think, you know, used the right way could really be effective. But you know, who's the guy, right? Like, who is he? The guy that the Packers want to bring in, or, you know, is he a kind of guy that the Packers aren't even calling? You know, I think it's one of the two. There haven't. Here's some reverse logic for you guys. The historical we're in every conversation Packers have had 0 rumors being associated with Clowney, which makes me think they might be associated with Clowney. They actually might be having conversations with him. That's kind of how the Julius Peppers thing unfolded. We just one day was like, hey, guess what? Julius Peppers is a Packer.
Yeah, he's taking a picture on Lambeau Field. It was like,
yeah.
What? So
there's
maybe
no rumors about that.
Yeah, maybe he'll be taking a picture, you know, posting it one of these days, and we'll say what.
Yeah, so that one's interesting. You know, and another thing that I saw, and I don't know if this came from today or yesterday or where it came from, but Rich Bisaccia says, I feel like I failed him being LaFleur at times. So I think that's interesting that he's, you know, not like owning that, but, you know, putting it out there that that's how he feels, and, you know, he's being kind of introspective that way. I like that. Do you have a larger context on that conversation? Was he did he have a press conference?
Yeah, he was one of the coordinators that spoke today. So
Okay.
they were asking him, like, kind of why he decided to come back, because there were rumors that he was considering retiring, and the Packers ended up extending his contract, getting him to come back. And he just felt like he has more to give. He talked about chasing the Super Bowl and working for LaFleur and all that, but he said he felt like he kind of owes LaFleur because he felt like at times he'd failed him. And I think he mentioned like 4 plays from the past. This Eagles game where Keyshawn Nixon fumbled that opening kickoff, though we know he recovered it. The Brandon McManus missed 30-some yard field goal. I think it was a 38-yard field goal in that game. Carlson, when he missed against the 49ers in the playoff game. And then I think the other one was the Bears had like a punt return for a touchdown in the regular season finale. It was a trick play where they faked that the ball was on one side, it was on the other, and that dude just ran. So he talked about like those were some of the plays that stuck out where he just felt like he could have been better and had the team prepared better or succeed better. I don't know how you do that with the missed kicks, but he said he felt like he failed him, and that, basically he's got a high standard and wants to do better for the team and for LaFleur, and decided to come back, that he still has that desire to, chase the Super Bowl and chase the high standards that he holds for himself.
Well, I thought it was interesting, and there were times last year where I remember thinking like, Satya, isn't this your thing, man? Like if people are making mistakes, the penalties were kind of an issue.
Yeah.
You're the leadership guy. You're that kind of, tone setter type guy. Like if these are a problem, that's on you, or at least you share in that some responsibility. So it's always good that these guys show that side of them is happening, right? Instead of these coaches. I mean, that was one thing that Cowboys fans for a long time couldn't stand about Jason Garrett. They called him the clapper because he just stand there and clap. Oh, we got to trust the process, man. Trust the process, man. People don't want to hear that. People want to hear, well, I made a mistake here, and I got to own it. I got to be better with that. And here's how I could have done this differently. Or here's how we are going to be different. You know what? We were good with our pass rush last year and these kind of gadget ways of getting the pass rush going and being kind of creative with it. But now that's on film. People are studying that now. So is that going to be the best way for it? And that was Hafley's take, I'm kind of taken from him. But all of these different, kind of self-accountability, self-ownership things is very refreshing. It makes me believe that these guys really are taking a look at the right things and trying to correct mistakes. But when you get a coach, like a Jason Garrett clapper, you just hear the same thing over and over and over again for 10 years as they go 8-8 for 10 years in a row. It just makes you want to go nuts. It's like, what, dude, say something different, please. Just say anything different, anything at all. And so I'm grateful we're not in that. I'm grateful we do have pretty transparent coaches, I think, whenever they're at the podium. My comment about the Packers as an organization stands. Like, if they're not at the podium, you're probably not getting anything out of them. They just don't let information out. And if you want an interview, you got to request it. They're probably going to turn it down. But yeah, so I really do enjoy that. So Bisaccia's comment to me really stood out. It's like, okay, cool. Like, here's a guy that, he doesn't really have to say those things. He could probably get away with some fluffy coach speak and then get out of there. So to say stuff like that is just encouraging, and it's encouraging that that's the tone being set with the players too. Players respond to that kind of stuff, man. Like we talk about, the D-line coach, how much of an impact can you make? If you got a guy who's constantly blaming other people for stuff that you're like, dude, you could have done something about that. Like quit blaming other people for that. That can become a problem. Maybe that's something that was going on with the D-line coach before. I don't know, but stuff like that, it does feel like there's a tone being set across all of these coaches of like self-improvement. We've got to constantly be, self-critical. I think that's the word that I'm looking for. So it's good to see that, right? And the media is really not even asking for it. Where it's not like the media is like, hey, are you going to do better this year? It's not Joe Barry up there right now. So I don't know. I was very, very encouraged by that. Not that I have like a larger point to that. Just I think it's a good sign of the culture they're building.
Yeah, he was being pretty honest, and you like to see that. And he did a self-assessment. Like he seems like he was speaking from the heart. So yeah, and it's funny because I actually thought at some points last season that their special teams weren't too bad. Like, and I know that's not really a compliment, but for the Packers it is. Once they signed McManus and figured out the kicking situation, like it's not like they were great on special teams. You know, it wasn't like it was winning them games, but it certainly wasn't losing them games. Like they were kind of doing what they were supposed to do, and now all of a sudden they had a successful kicker. And then the punt return against the Bears happened. And then, McManus misses a chip shot in the playoff game. Nixon fumbles. And it's like, here we go. Same old Packers special teams let us down. Oh, I think we're back to kind of, at least I am, like, okay, whatever the special teams does, I'll just take the positives and hope that there's more positives than negatives. As far
I
as
just hope you guys aren't historically bad and we'll chalk it up.
Right. They have a kicker. They now have multiple options at returner where, I mean, it's not too long ago where you're like, who's returning kicks? Or, they roll through returners. None of them were any good. And now you have Keyshawn Nixon, who's one of the best kickoff returners. And I know he had said at the end of the season, like, I'm not doing it anymore. I don't want to do it. Bisaccia came out today and kind of said, like, he was frustrated with the loss and probably frustrated that so many teams were kicking touchbacks. Like, he's going to be in the mix, which he's got to be. And they went out and signed Hardman. Now, Hardman's got to be good enough to make the team because if he's not good enough to be their returner, he's not going to make it as a receiver. So, but at least they're giving him options. The two rookie receivers have experience being, Golden return punts, Williams return kickoffs. So, like, there's experienced guys there as well. Jaden Reed's return punts, though it seems like they want to phase him out of that. But they have options there. Certainly, Isaiah Simmons was brought in as a special teams guy. They brought Christian Welch back. He's a special teams guy. So, like, there's at least some players in the mix there for special teams and the hope that maybe they can be improved finally.
Yeah, it does seem like a real effort that was made to improve the special teams without calling it out. It wasn't, and again, I think most fans were all kind of beat down by it at this point. It's like, well, the Packers special teams just aren't going to be good, so whatever. It does seem like they made a conscious effort to improve that in a lot of different ways, like you just described. I mean, Simmons is one that really stands out to me. But even the draft picks, like a lot of those guys are going to have a good chance to compete on special teams. So it's good to see that. It's good to see these guys not being satisfied and not thinking, we just need to swing at it. Like I think that's what sort of soured out in 2022 is that was what year 3 of Run It Back or something like that, where it's like, all right, dude, this movie's been played. You guys, sure, bring back the same group, but at least do something different. And that was all they had left. Like that. It's like they had one trick. The trick was exhausted, and that was it. So, yeah, I like that they're not being complacent. They're not sitting on these things. They're going, look, we did some good things. Those things are on film now. We can't rely on those things completely. Maybe we'll come back to them. But at the end of the day, we've got to be continuously improving, innovating, kind of changing and adapting. And it sounds like they're getting the right guys in place to do that. So it's not always the sexiest plan that works. Sometimes it really is just that nitty gritty plan where you've got to fill in the right gaps to bring the whole thing together. And that's what it feels like to me. They really focused on doing this offseason. And kind of quietly, again, it's not like all the media and the fans going into the draft were saying, you got to improve this offense. You got to improve this offense. Like people wanted a first round receiver because they've wanted a first round receiver for the last 20 years. But beyond that, you're not looking at this going, this offense stinks. Nobody was really that sentiment wasn't there. But if you look at the moves they made, like, dang, the offense was a priority. They weren't happy about the way things turned out with the offense, and rightfully so. When you look back at it, you're like, yeah, dude, if you're going to have some guys get hurt on the offensive line, maybe don't put turnstiles in their place. Like let's have some like a bit of a backup plan at a few of those positions.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go for it.
No, I think you made a good point. Like that the fact they went out there and added so many guys to the offensive line, receiver, tells you kind of what they were thinking of the team overall. Like the fact that they went out and got 2 receivers with their first 3 picks in the draft, and they didn't add anybody at edge rusher until the 4th round. Like, kind of tells you we're more concerned about that receiver room than they are about the pass rushers.
That's what it looks like to me.
Agree or disagree, but they certainly knew they needed to add at receiver, that they just weren't comfortable enough. And I know there's contract situations coming up and they always are looking ahead and all that, but they weren't satisfied. And it doesn't seem like they're satisfied just thinking all those pass catchers are going to improve and they're all going to start catching the ball better next year and, start to step up and, become higher level receivers than what we've seen, show more consistency than what they showed. Like, they weren't comfortable enough doing that. So they went out and addressed it with, 2 early picks. Sends a message to them. Yeah,
big time message. And I think that the players themselves send a message too. It's like, hey, yeah, we got Golden. He's fast. We also got Williams. He's big and fast. Like, these are obviously guys that are going to push for targets, right? These are not guys where it's like, here's another 6 foot, 200-pound receiver. Good luck. And I hate to downplay that because they were so good at finding those types of guys for so long. But now every team has those guys. Every team has a few of those guys. But not every team has a 4.29. And not every team has a 6'5", 225-pound running back. You know what I mean? Like, these are some serious features that you've got on these guys, and they're going to demand targets and snaps. So I really do, and just to reiterate, it really feels like the scene from The Dark Knight where the Joker cracks that pool stick and basically walks away. It's like one of those guys is going to walk out of here and one of them's not. It feels like Goody's really calling out that receiver room to say, look, you guys, you were loaded last year and you all just kind of dudded out, and not to be too harsh about it. Jaden Reed had some good games and each of these guys had good games. I'm not saying you need to like wholesale get rid of all of them and start new, but these guys need a fire lit under them. When it just didn't feel like that fire was there last season. And when Love needed a guy, a dog that he could just go to in crunch time, 3rd down, need that 1st down, it just didn't feel like he had that guy. Tucker Kraft kind of developed into that guy, and he's bringing that energy. But even in him doing that, it felt like he was kind of doing that because nobody else was, right? He's like, I'll have the attitude if nobody else is going to have an attitude about this, but this is ridiculous, and just felt kind of lackluster. And that happens when guys are complacent and comfortable and not feeling like they've got to compete. And I'll say, I think that some of that comes from all of them having unique skill sets, right? It's not like you've got the same type of dude across the board. Jaden Reed is different from Christian Watson, is different from Romeo Dobbs, is different from Wicks, and is different from Heath too, by the way. Melton's a little bit different from all of them too. So they all kind of a little bit different. So they can be using it each way. And that in itself almost reduces the competition. And when you look now at who they added, all right, well, Christian Watson, you've got some competition in Savion Williams. Like, you two are the same type of dude in a lot of ways, not like completely, but in a lot of ways. Like, dude, put up or shut up. And not that there's not room for both of you. There is definitely room for both of you, but there's also other competitions that are going to have a say in that as well. Jaden Reed, guess what? Matthew Golden's a lot like you, dude, except faster and maybe better. Like, we're going to find out. But those types of things don't allow these guys to get complacent and take it easy. Whereas, like, Jaden Reed was his own type dude and Christian Watson was his own type dude. And they all kind of had their own roles and nobody was really forcing the urgency for that role. So I think that's what you've added there. And in a lot of ways, I think you've got that in the DB position too, with Hobbs being added to the group. So a lot of it's kind of the inverse, right? Like, there's a lot of the same type dude at the cornerback position room, but it creates the same competition, right? It's like a lot of you guys are good at nickel. A lot of you guys are good at outside. A lot of you guys are good at press. A lot of you guys are just like dog type dudes.
Yeah.
Who's going to come out of this thing, right? A lot of attitudes in that room, Valentine and Nixon. Like, these guys all got attitudes. Obviously, Jair, if he's in there, big attitude, right? So I look forward to the competition breeding success. Not everybody will come out of that okay, right? Like some of these guys will just not play well. Some of them won't be able to handle the competition, and they'll get traded, get cut, whatever happens. But they're increasing the competition. I think you needed that, and I think honestly, you probably needed that back in the Ted Thompson days when you're riding the days of Jordy out. And you still got Devontae, but like it did feel like they got complacent there for a few years at the receiver position. And then when they tried to reload with MVS in that class, it was all right, but it didn't have the same pop as those guys before. So I love that they're not being complacent. I guess that's the real overarching point there. Same thing with the line too. You bring in more big bodies, you force competition, high draft picks with Belton there. Jenkins, man, not to say that he's expendable, but dude, the competition's fierce. Like if you're not going to show up, the guys are going to start trying to take your job, and you might go from saying, hey, give me a contract to like getting traded and good luck. Now you got to negotiate with somebody else for a contract. Who knows how that goes? I don't know. But yeah, the competition's going to breed success. We'll say that. There's no room for complacency, I don't think, anywhere on this roster.
No, there's lots of competition, lots of versatility. Like those are two things that stand out to me. And there's depth. Not at every position. We need corners, obviously. We've talked about that a million times. But yeah, it's already a pretty good roster. Like it's already shaping up, not just the starters. They could go out there and play a game tomorrow and have their starters, but they have most of their roster already, right? And I think the depth has improved, and the competition is going to be really good in training camp. You talk about offensive line, receiver, running back is going to be a really good competition with Lloyd coming back. Yeah, it's a deeper roster, I think, right now than where they finished the season, and they value versatility. We talked about it at the beginning with the corners, and obviously the offensive line's huge. But I mean, the versatility is the different receiver types that they have. And that's big too. So yeah, I go back to the point, like there's guys that you can move on both sides of the ball that you can move around to different spots and do different things for you. And that's huge. That builds depth and a week to week thing for a team not exactly knowing where you're going to put certain guys.
Yeah.
A game planning perspective, that's a valuable tool to have. And I think they have that on both sides of the ball with multiple players.
Totally agree. And speaking of the running back room, Josh Jacobs gets back out there on the podcast circuit, does Bussin' with the Boys. Did you catch that one?
I did not, no.
It's a good listen. Really, really good listen. I won't actually, no spoilers or anything. It's a good hour-long podcast. If you guys are looking to get to know Josh Jacobs a little bit better, man, I liked the guy before. Now, like, get that man a lifelong contract and make sure he retires a Packer. That's what I'll say. You just want to root for this guy. Awesome podcast. Definitely highly recommend. Again, Bussin' with the Boys. That's Taylor Lewan and I can see his face. Why can't I think of his name? The linebacker. Will Compton.
Yeah, Will Compton. Yeah.
Taylor Lewan, Will Compton, couple of former NFL players, offensive tackle and linebacker. They both played for several different teams, big personalities, so they know a lot of these guys. LaFleur actually went on there. They had that was a really good episode.
Yeah, I saw some clips of that, and he was on there a couple of years ago too. Him and I think it was maybe the year Bisaccia got hired in Green Bay.
I think that's what it was. Yeah,
they had them both on, and I think they might have had a couple players on or whatever. But yeah, they've had some Packers, over the years on their podcast.
Yeah, so if y'all are looking for a good listen, for some Packers in the offseason, there's an episode with Matt LaFleur on Bussin' with the Boys. I think that was just a couple weeks ago, not very long ago. And then most recently, Josh Jacobs did one. I think it was over the weekend or maybe late last week. Great listens. Josh Jacobs, what a dude. I mean, loved him before, love him even more now. His story of his time at Alabama is incredible, all of it. So, yeah, definitely check that out. Highly recommend that one. Yeah, and then so next thing we got to look forward to here is schedule release, right? We already got a little teaser going on.
Yeah, by the time we talk next week, we'll know the schedule.
Okay.
But we found out the first game as we talk here on Monday night. So the first one announced, not the first game, the first one announced Packers at Bears December 20th, which is week 16. That's a Saturday, which is interesting because there's two games on Saturday, Packers, Bears, Eagles, and the Commanders. They're going to play, the NFL is going to play 3 games Christmas Day, which falls on a Thursday this year. Last season, right. So last season they played, I think it was just 2 games that were on Christmas Day. It was a Wednesday. Those teams, all 4 of those teams played in games on Saturday. So then they had kind of like that the normal Sunday to Thursday turnaround. It was just moved up, Saturday to Wednesday. But all those teams that played on Saturday played on Wednesday on Christmas. So it would lead you to think if they're putting the Packers on Saturday, 5 days before Christmas, they may be playing Christmas Day. And they play the Eagles at Lambeau. They play the Commanders at Lambeau.
Those would be good ones.
Right. And those 2 teams play each other that same Saturday. The Packers are playing the Bears. So could very well be Christmas at Lambeau.
Oh, yes. NFL, come on, guys. This isn't hard. This is not hard. Make the easy decision here. Christmas at Lambeau. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants. Just do it. Just do it. Don't overthink this one.
We'll find out.
Yeah. So next week we'll get to break down the schedule a little bit. See what we're looking at. See the road ahead here to the 60th Super Bowl champion coming back to Titletown. I don't know, man. I'm kind of excited. Is there any other, we got a little teaser with Christmas Day. Any other weekends or times of the schedule that have your particular attention? Maybe just opening day or like which one? What are you looking at the most?
Yeah, it'll be interesting since LaFleur's been the head coach. They have not opened at home. Every season opener has been on the road.
Yes.
Right. Last year was Brazil, but other than that, they've been on the road, or including that, they've been on the road. So he has not had a week 1 game at Lambeau yet. So will they finally? And I believe somebody put it out there today. I believe that's the longest streak without having week 1 at home in the NFL. So does that change? Yeah, that would be cool if it did. I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal if you're just starting on the road, but for that long, like, all right, let them have a home game.
Yeah, let's.
It's getting a little too much now.
LaFleur's been the head coach for the Packers for a while now. He's done well. Let's give the guy an opening home game.
Right. Why are they the only ones with that long of a streak? So that's interesting. They play the AFC North this year. So I know one of the road games is against the Steelers, and they may have somebody playing quarterback who we're familiar with. So that'll be interesting.
All right. So conspiracy time. Like, are there people behind the scenes being like, Rodgers, dude, we have to release the schedule next week, man? Like, decision time.
I'm sure. I mean, they're probably not going to Rodgers, but they're probably trying to find out everything they can from the Steelers. Like, where's it at? I would think they're counting on it. So
you got to, I guess, right? Where else is he going to go?
Yeah, at this point. So I would think they're probably going to count on that. We'll find out. And I would think that they would put Packers Steelers pretty early in the season, just because
Packers Steelers for Christmas, though. Oh,
well. Yeah, I would think it's going to be early, though, because he's 41 going on 42. Towards Achilles, in 2023 in the 4th play of the game.
What are the odds he makes it to the end of the season?
Right. Like, I mean, he played the full season last season, credit to him and all, but can he do that again a year older? Like, I would think they want to make sure that he's healthy for that game so they can get some big ratings, whichever network it's on. So I would think that'll be early in the season.
Man, we could have some exciting schedule stuff to talk about next week,
Yeah.
Get maybe a little Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers news, and then a little schedule release showing us when we get the Aaron Rodgers versus the Packers showdown. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm in. Let's do this. That's enough reason for y'all to come back and hang out with us next week, right? Monday night, 9:30. this just basically a week from now. Come on back, y'all. It's the middle of the offseason, but we got plenty of Packers stuff to talk about. If y'all enjoyed the episode tonight, please spike that like button for us. Definitely jump on over to the YouTube channel, Packers Talk Network. Subscribe, hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell next to it for some bonus points for us. It'll tell you when we're streaming live, which is Monday night, every Monday night, 9:30, Central Time, 10:30 Eastern. You night owls over there with Tim. You guys hanging out past midnight, staying up past your bedtime. That's all right. Come hang out with us. We're going to have some fun. We're going to get through this offseason together. We got a few tough weeks here, I think. Enough to talk about next week, I think. But after that, it gets a little harder. Maybe some mini camp stuff comes up eventually. But it'll be the season again before we know it. It'll be training camp, and the Packers news will flood. It'll be a blink of an eye, and we'll be hoisting another Lombardi, right, Tim?
Let's hope so. I love the way you think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. We had a great time. Love you guys always listening, subscribing, and just talking Pack with us. We're not getting into all the other stuff. So come on back next week, Packers fans, and most importantly,